We've been talking about this on this program since politicians in Illinois were leading the state down the primrose path of it's just medical marijuana. People with glaucoma have some empathy, compassion to full-on marijuana legalization so that these low-life impresarios who also corner the gaming market here by buying politicians could enrich themselves more by also moving drugs. That's what we're focused on in Illinois, is turning the state into one reliant on a mob economy. Gambling, drugs, abortions. We're just waiting for the legalization of prostitution, and we'll be there. But just focus on dope for a minute. It was several years ago, a few years before COVID, that Alex Berenson, the former New York Times reporter, came out with that book, Tell Your Children the Truth About Marijuana, Violence, Mental Illness. And I've shared stories on this program, too, when we've taken up the topic. A good friend of mine's son had a psychotic break from substantial continued use of marijuana. Thankfully, he's on the other side of that now, but it was a mess, to say the least. A couple of issues that we've talked about, but just to refresh everybody's recollection. The weed that people smoked at Woodstock generally had about 3 to 5% THC. Now many shops sell weed products that contain as much as 90% THC. Jonathan Avery is a doctor and the vice chair of addiction psychiatry at Weill Cornell Medicine. Says he's seeing more people land in the emergency room after accidentally overdosing on high-potency THC products, particularly edibles, where people can underestimate how much they've taken. He adds that the drug is particularly dangerous for teens because even low-level use is linked to an increased risk of developing psychiatric disorders and doing poorly in school. The addiction and mental health issue. Among people who use marijuana daily, about 20 to 30% will develop cannabis use disorder. It's a big percentage, a big number. The disorder is characterized by craving marijuana, being able to cut down on use. You need more to get the same effect. Then you feel off without it. Sure, classic signs of addiction. Well, many people can use cannabis to cope with anxiety. Many studies now show that the drug makes anxiety worse. It's also associated with increased odds of developing anxiety problems and more severe symptoms in those with anxiety and mood disorders. In addition, for adolescents, regularly using cannabis during teen years is also associated with disruption in memory and learning. One study found that frequent cannabis users who started taking it during adolescence lost several IQ points between the ages of 13 and 38. So is it a good idea to reclassify it down, as the Trump administration has, and to continue to stay silent in the face of the propaganda that this is like a medicine as opposed to a toxin? I mean, alcohol is too, but that's no defense to the promotion, gone from tolerance to legalization to promotion of marijuana use. That's what's actually happening, if we're being honest. For more on all this, pleased to be joined by Kevin Sabet, CEO of Smart Approaches to Marijuana. He was a drug policy advisor in the Clinton, W., and Obama administrations. Kevin, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
I guess we're now at a place where more Americans use marijuana every day than than there are Americans who drink every day. And so there has to be some assessment of the societal impact, particularly given some of the studies that are suggesting these problems I mentioned with the strength of the percentage of cannabis that is THC, the power, the potency of the drug, as well as its impact down the line, as if COVID wasn't bad enough, on young people.
Yeah. Yeah, no, you're exactly right. It's really a slow motion disaster, and it's actually speeding up faster than even the experts thought. Because today's marijuana has been genetically bred to be so much stronger than it used to be. It's a completely different drug from what people are used to from even as late as the 90s or 2000s. It's been genetically bred, so the THC, which is what binds to your receptors in your brain and body, which in other words gets you high. That's why you feel high. That level has just changed by an order of magnitude. It used to be 2 to 3%. It can be up to 99.9% in these waxes and vapes, cartridges that are being sold openly in Illinois and in a couple other dozen states in defiance of federal law. So it's a new industry. It's all about money. That's what it's all about. It's addiction for profit. Of course, we've seen the movie before, right? With the tobacco, big pharma, big alcohol. Why we would want to repeat it if we can help it is beyond me. Like you said, people say, "What about alcohol?" That's like saying, my headlights are broken. What about breaking my taillights just to be consistent? It makes no sense.
Yeah.
But, but there is a difference with alcohol. Alcohol doesn't, one or two glasses of alcohol do not make you psychotic. And that's the other thing about marijuana is that it is actually increasing your psychosis, schizophrenia, all of these things that we're trying to obviously reduce that are skyrocketing in our society. So it's a really bad idea. Unfortunately, President Trump is listening to one or two advisors who have a money stake in this, and it's really bad.
Yeah, it's interesting too because maybe some electorates are catching on the effort to legalize recreational marijuana in places like Florida, and it's not the only one. There's been about 4 states
Right.
recently referendum that have gone down, despite obviously heavy spending
Yeah.
from the marijuana lobby and the politician and on
Yeah.
politicians that they own or purchase. So it seems like it's maybe through personal experience or just being in states that are overrun with dispensaries and saying, I don't want that to be where I live.
Yeah.
Maybe there's starting to
No,
be a sea change
you're
there.
You're completely right. There is a reversal right now. So when you lose the New York Times, your movement's in trouble.
Mm.
The New York Times came out 3, 4 months ago saying that, oops, yeah, you're right. America has a marijuana problem. And it said that, we used to argue this was kind of harmless and not a big deal. But when we look at the numbers, we're getting very worried. The fact you have more people using this mind altering substance than smoking now. Smoking is bad for you. Of course, no one should do it. It doesn't change your mind. It doesn't make you psychotic and schizophrenic. There's a huge difference. And so the New York Times said that. And now, like you said, Florida has rejected it. In fact, 7 out of the last 10 states to vote on this have rejected it. And even in a state like Massachusetts, which isn't exactly Texas, they are voting to repeal the sales part of legalization because it's had such a bad impact. I don't know if it'll succeed, but the fact that it's even on the ballot, you have 100,000 people in the state that have brought this to the ballot shows you that I think people are actually beginning to say, you know what? Maybe I didn't want people to go to jail for marijuana. Not that they ever did. That was a huge myth. But okay, maybe I didn't want that to happen in theory. But I don't really want a pot shop on every corner. I don't want to smell weed every single time I'm in a city. That's all you smell with your kids when you're walking around going to the museums. So I think there is becoming a bit of a change.
I got a text. If marijuana is stronger today, wouldn't stand to reason people consume less. Well, that's not how addiction works, is it?
Well, that would be if people are logical. I mean, sure, wouldn't it stand to reason that a lot of people don't do no, that's not happening. I wish it was happening, but when you look at the latest data, people are using way more than they were 10, 20, 30 years ago. We have, again, more daily users of weed, high potency weed, than drinkers and cigarette smokers for the first time in our history. So I wish that they would titrate their dose. I wish people were logical. Addiction and drugs have nothing to do with logic. Otherwise, nobody would be doing any of it. It has to do with your brain being the selfish organ and your brain saying, I really like that, despite it being bad for me. I really love it. And it wants more of it. And the industry knows it.
And the first state, I think it was the first state to legalize statewide was Colorado, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I remember, again, this is now pre-COVID. We're sort of revisiting this. more frequently now, that they were starting to put together enough data to make educated commentary about the impact on society, and it's also on the crime side of it, frankly. And I'm talking about like driving under the influence. And so in terms of preventable deaths, you had obviously the .08 Mothers Against Drug Driving, the .08 initiative that changed laws in a lot of states in terms of taking drunk driving more seriously. And perhaps there's evidence now starting to paint a picture that there needs to be more serious law enforcement action taken on with respect to marijuana and illegal activity.
Oh yeah, no, the underground market and crime have skyrocketed in places with legal marijuana. They said that they would get rid of crime if they legalized it. But the reality is, first of all, the underground market loves legalization. They get a pass. They can work with impunity. They can undercut the legal price. They don't pay the taxes.
Mm-hmm.
Plenty of people go to the black market still. So that's thriving. And then crime around pot shops, you look at study after study, also shows increases. So we haven't seen this huge reduction in, again, we were told we were going to see a huge reduction in crime. None of that's happened.
And with respect to the physical impacts, because that seems to be where the most emphasis should be placed. What do we know about the incidence of psychotic breaks, serious health consequences from repeated use, particularly from a young age?
Well, we know a few things. Number one, we know that you're probably going to get a lot dumber because your IQ will go down between 5 and 8 points. And that is a permanent IQ loss that is very difficult to regain. We know that you have a 4 to 6 times more likelihood of a psychotic break. And when you have psychotic breaks, that's really scary. I mean, you kind of just say that word like it's nothing. That is a very scary thing. It's a total disassociation of reality that sometimes causes violence. It can cause long-term schizophrenia if it's happening over and over again. So that is not a good thing. And then we're looking at things like heart risk, cardiovascular, lungs, of course, especially if you're smoking something. So, these are all the things that I would be worrying about. And then some very acute things that can really affect you in the moment. There was a huge article yesterday by the Associated Press about what's called cannabis hyperemesis syndrome. This is uncontrollable vomiting that sends thousands of people to the ER every year, and the only relief for it is taking a scalding hot shower if you're lucky. If you basically almost burn your body, you can start getting relief from this horrible feeling of constant vomiting. Again, this is not the stuff that makes you giggle and fall asleep in your dorm room. This is the sort of disconnect that politicians have with this issue. And they also think it's popular when, of course, it's gotten actually less popular, especially among the GOP, but really among everybody and independents too. But they don't know. I don't think, J.B. Pritzker, the reality of marijuana is probably, I hope, from 30 years ago. And it's some of his adults that are 60 to 70 years old who take a gummy once a week and fall asleep. That is not the reality of today's marijuana that we are legalizing and promoting.
Yeah, and J.B. Pritzker never did get over the munchies. That's pretty obvious. The other issue with this is, unlike say opioids, there are no medications for marijuana addiction to assist with getting clean effectively, and the drug stays in your system a lot longer than alcohol does too. So it has lingering effects in a way that even moderate use of alcohol doesn't.
Oh, absolutely. First of all, when we say it stays in your system, it doesn't just mean it shows up on a drug test and it means nothing. It means that it's actually affecting you. So when we do driving simulation studies, you see people who are driving and flying planes, whatever, they're affected the next day as well. And so, it's not just when they're using, when they feel it. So that's a huge difference. And yeah, there are it's not like opioids where if you have an addiction, we can give you some kind of medication. We can't do that with this. So And so many people are in denial too that this is even an issue. So, yeah, the treatment is huge. There's more kids in treatment for marijuana than of any other drug, including alcohol, which again, unprecedented until we had this era of legalization.
If clawing it back to being illegal is not possible or plausible in some states, I mean, are there other recommendations you have? Would you like to see the federal government step in and regulate the THC potency? Are there other things that could be done to make it more innocuous than it is?
Yeah, sure. I mean, in theory, there are. The problem is this industry doesn't let us do anything. So, in theory, absolutely, let's have huge warning labels, advertising restrictions. Let's have THC content restrictions. We don't need to be having 90% THC products. Let's not have the pot shop on every corner. Let's limit it near kids' spaces. I mean, there's all kinds of things we'd love to do. We've tried to do in various states. The industry has grown. They are all about money. They're all about any industry, which is their bottom line. They don't like a lot of regulation. I mean, that's obviously any business. When you legitimize it, that's what they want. So it's very hard for that to happen. That's why in places like Massachusetts, residents have said enough is enough. We're going to repeal the sales part of it. Doesn't mean we want to criminalize adults who use privately occasionally in their own home with no harm to others. But that's very different than this mass commercialization. So there are things in theory, but in practice, they're very difficult.
Is that like, I know you released a documentary film, THC Inc. Earlier in the year, and I wonder what kind of response you get from the industry, or what their effort to respond to some of these studies that you were mentioning is. Is it that sort of thing where they use straw man arguments, like you want to arrest my 70-year-old dad who's having an edible in the privacy of his own home, or something like that? Do they try to do those? Is that their tack, or what's their tack?
Yes. Yeah, they often use, sort of heartstrings. Hey, the veteran needs it for PTSD, even though it increases the risk of PTSD symptoms, according to Yale research, not decreases. Or they say, this is about seizures in kids. Listen, if there's a medication based on the compounds in this drug that are helpful for people, great. I have no problem with it. Put it through the FDA, get it in pharmacies. We don't need to have dispensaries. We don't need to have a 19-year-old with a GED who's stoned out of his mind telling you what to give your 5-year-old with seizures. I mean, that makes zero sense. So treat it like any other medicine. That's fine. Regulate it properly. No one has an issue. But they use these kinds of arguments. But I got to be honest with you, I've been doing this since I was 14 years old. So more than 30 years I've been talking about this issue. And, it used to be like debating, earnest people, libertarians even, or
sure.
Hey, we don't want people going to. It's totally changed. And it's become these are guys in suits that have MBAs from top universities, and they don't even debate anymore. They're just out making their money like any other person that wants to make money. They kind of avoid the political discussion of it. They leave that to a few activists, and they laugh all the way to the bank.
Kevin Sabet, CEO of Smart Approaches to Marijuana, and formerly a drug policy advisor in the Clinton, W., and Obama administrations. Kevin, thanks so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
It was really a pleasure to have them. Thanks also for plugging the film THC Inc. It's going to be free on YouTube in a few weeks. It's on Documentary Plus now for anyone to watch. I appreciate it.
Okay, great. The film again, THC Inc. And Kevin, join us on the alphawealthgroup.com answer line.
There's only one radio show in Chicago talking about today's biggest stories and telling you what they really mean. That show is this one, Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560, The Answer.
Your kitchen's outdated. Your bathroom feels cramped. Every day you wait, prices go up. And you keep living in a space that doesn't work. At Forever Remodeling, one team handles everything. Design, planning, and installation, start to finish. We show you your new space in 3D before we ever break ground. No surprises.